So, I initially got my topic, and I reached out, and I was like, there's something that I think we could do here around this topic. And I think one of the biggest things within the insurance business is new people. Like, who in here is new? You're new. So I really hope you don't experience this. But I feel like insurance is a place you can feel like you're on an island very quickly by yourself. And if we can do anything to prevent that, I think we should, right? I mean, why not? And who in here is like actively recruiting? So a lot. Well, it kind of makes sense to why you're here. Okay. So have you guys ever heard, when you're talking to people on the phone, probably like the biggest thing that I hear over and over again is if you're speaking to an agent that is licensed, their biggest thing is they're not getting help. They've gotten videos to watch, and it's like, go get them, Tiger. And that's like the biggest thing over and over again that I hear on the phone. It's like, my upline doesn't give me the time of day. Like, that's not going to, I don't need, anyway. And so, like, what I've tried to develop, oh, and by the way, if y'all see me start swatting up here, there's this big-ass fly in here, and he is trying to get me. It's happened since earlier when we were up here practicing. We're not practicing, but, and he is attacking. So be on the lookout. If you start seeing me freak out, I don't have Tourette's, which is not, it's just, yeah. All right. So we'll be all right. We'll be okay. Thank you. But back to what I was talking about is you can. And I think if there's anything that I feel like I do well, I like when I look at the leaderboards, and I'm big on leaderboards, like leaderboards fuel you, at least for me. And one of the things that when I talk to people, for me, it doesn't matter how many people you recruit if nobody sells anything, right? Like, if you understand the concept, like overrides rock, just so anybody in here who's not making overrides, like, just let you know, it's pretty sick. Like, imagine going on vacation for a week and you're still getting paid. Not a bad deal. And so, but like recruiting somebody is the easy part. It is. Getting somebody to say yes is the easy part. The part that comes after that is where it gets challenging. Because one, you're working with people. I mean, I don't know if y'all know this, but sometimes you could probably be difficult to work with. And some of the things that I'm going to be going over here, some of y'all already know. Y'all going to be checklisting like, my upline didn't do that with me. My upline didn't do that. Look, don't be pointing the finger. Okay? Let's take this one step at a time. But my hopes is with some of this stuff, my goal is to give you step by step. And I don't care if you've been here, 5 days, 5 months, or 5 years, or 20 years, it's like some of these people. But I do hope that you can implement some of this into your business and give people a shot. Because think about how many people that we're talking to out there that are getting no support. That could be your next 20, 30, 40K producer if we give the time. Now, there is the other side of it. They got to hold up their end of the bargain, which I'm getting a little ahead of myself. But they got to hold up their end of the bargain. And a lot of the things that I've learned, like I've put together some stuff, but a lot of this I've learned from other people. So, like that's why I think the events are important. Get around. Like if you can take a couple things from this, that's what I hope. You take one or two things that you can implement into your business and make a difference. Because if I'm looking at a leader, like I would rather hire 10 people and get 9 of them writing policies than I would have 100 people and get 10. You got to understand when it comes to recruiting, when you're recruiting somebody, like I always talk about it like this, if you had 10 people, that's 10 people you're agreeing to give your attention to. Does that make sense? So if those 10, if I hire 100, now I've got 100 people. Is there any way I can keep up with that? No, not at all. So again, like I just want to come back to the point of like, it doesn't matter how many people you get to say yes. It matters how many people you get writing business, how many people's lives you change with this business. And I know that sounds like cliche, but I just always think about the people that I've already seen, and I haven't been here that long. Like I've seen this stuff take place. Like Vincenzo Napoli's in the back of the room, one of the most badass salespeople in the entire company. Like he is so funny to me. He's a charmer in the appointments, but he is so aggressive. I mean, like puts his foot in the door when they try to shut it, stuff like that. Like people wouldn't do everything that Vinny does. But what I can tell you is like when I first met Vinny, I was over at a buddy's house, his cousin, Andy. and they were watching WWE, which I'm not a fan of at all. But there was beer and food, and so I went. And I remember, when Vinny got started with me, he's always corrects me. It was like $14 an hour. 15. Okay, $15 an hour at a restaurant. He was working 60 hours a week. And he started doing this business 1 day a week. He made $50,000 his first year. Second year, I got him to work 2 days a week. He made $116,000. Third year, he made $160,000. I don't know what you made last year. I have to get up to date on that. But then this year, I'm just like, watching somebody do that is just unbelievable. And I think when you surround yourself with people like that and you help raise them up, you go up too. So like let's take an honest effort to give people an opportunity. It's not just getting them to say yes. It's really training and coaching them. And it doesn't stop. Like it's continuous. Like I think back to success stories that I've had. Jeff Schultz. Jeff Schultz used to call me and Vinny at least 8 times a day. Is that true? 100%. And why take his call? Because he's plugged in, and he's trying, failing, adjusting. That's what I live by, those 3 words. If you're on my team, you hear me say that all the time. Try, fail, adjust. That's what Jeff was out there doing. That's who I want to work with. I don't want to work, and some of this stuff you might not agree with. Anyway, let me get started. I'm going to run out of time. This is what happens. All right. I created this a little while ago. It's a little outdated because I've added some things into it. But I did share it because this is the overarching setup of what I do when I'm bringing somebody into the business, right? And I think it helps. When I designed this, I told my managers, I said, hey, I'm not designing this for you to send to people. And that's what people will do without direction. If I sent this to Sean Boone, he might send it to Deanna. But that's not what it's for. This is a checklist for Sean Boone. Not for his downline. This is to make sure he's doing the things that he needs to do with his downline as they come in to give them an opportunity. It's not just getting them to say yes. So if y'all want to take a picture of that, I need to update it, to be honest, but I'll get around to that when I get around to it, okay? But it just breaks everything down. And I do want to talk a little bit about non-licensed because I think there's some good points to make there. But really the bulk of my conversation is going to be around when you get somebody started and making money. Okay. So these are going to be obvious to you guys. Next step for any recruit is to fast-track an agent. You have got to fast-track them. If I do not fast-track them and I get off the phone with them and one of you guys calls them and fast-tracks them, they are no longer mine. So we got to do that, okay? Meet them and get them to the next meeting. That does wonders for you. Getting them to a meeting around other people in the alliance will do wonders for your business, okay? I can't relate to a single mom, for example. I'm not single, and I don't have kids, but I can point them into Megan Wood's direction or some of the other people that I know, and they will have a relationship. That doesn't affect me at all. I'm still going to, as overrides work in a hierarchy, I'm still going to make money, but I've got somebody else helping me, and that's what the alliance is. It's like a unity of people that come together, and they help each other out. So I'm trying to get them to that next meeting. That's what I'm doing. If you're missing out on that, I don't know why. When I'm recruiting, here's what I do. And Mike Hill was with me for a long time. Congratulations. He's now a full-time agent. Killing it, by the way. So huge props to him. But you can ask him. When we went to recruit, we were always looking at theallianceevents.com. We would click on hotspots. And that's where we were focused on recruiting at. Why did we do that? Because we need to get them plugged into the alliance as quickly as possible. All right? Send them. So this is where I start to send them materials, too. This is right off the bat. Whether it's their new agent guide or new agent kit, whether it's books. I need to get them to start buying into the mentality of the business. Because this business is really hard. And I don't care who says, I hate when I hear people say this business is easy. It's not easy. It's not an easy business, right? It's simple, as everybody says, and I agree with that. But it's not easy, and most of it's up here. That's the biggest thing. So what do I need to do? I need to get them to start listening to the right audios. I need them to get around the right people. Go to meetings. I need for them to be reading books, stuff like that. You would be surprised. Nobody's ever told people to do this. They have no direction in their life, and they're working some dead-end job that's doing nothing for them. And nobody's telling them to read or get better. So when they come in, that's my goal. And then I'm immediately trying to find depth, okay? I'm immediately trying to start getting to know who they know. And this helps when we're traveling out to meet them, right? If I can get you to get 5 people there, why would I not? And then I'm going to find somebody better in there, which is going to, like Andy does the example where you light a match and turn it upside down. That does not feel good, right? that would not feel good. But I'm trying to get something under there to excite that person even more. And by the way, when you find, depth's going to be where you find your best people. So do I agree with using PC Recruits? 100%. Do I agree with using ZipRecruiter? Yes. But what do you do once you find somebody off ZipRecruiter? Find depth. You're going to find a better person than you found on ZipRecruiter. I promise you, every time. You're going to find somebody better, okay? So that's kind of like the immediate things. Let's talk about the non-licensed recruits. This is your golden opportunity to start building urgency and expectation. So, is there 3? Okay. So non-licensed recruits, that's actually perfect right there. Create urgency and expectation. Okay, so when you're talking to new agents, here's what you do. Hey, look, Marcus, right? Okay, Marcus, you're licensed, right? Okay. So if I was getting you into class, for example, here's what I'm gonna say. So Marcus, look, here's the thing. We need to get you through class as quickly as possible. And I give them examples. So here's the reality, because some people they want to know why. They want to know why you're telling them to do something. So I explain that to them. I say, hey, look, it's very boring material, and your chances of passing go up dramatically if you finish this within the next 5 to 7 business days. Or I don't say business day. I don't know why I just said that. 5 to 7 days. So what I'm telling them, and this is something I picked up from Mike Guerra. So look, you're an ambitious person, right? Yeah? So my ambitious people typically get this done in 2 to 3 days. My really slow people, they take like 8 or 9 days. You think you can get through this in 2 or 3 days? And then they agree to that, right? I mean, that's what they, like when you say that, when you set that expectation with them, my really slow people, they don't want to be really slow. Like that sounds almost like a slap in the face. And I kind of want it to feel like that, if I'm being truthful, because I want them to get through this. And I do, that's a real thing. If they take longer than 7 days, the guy with, when we used to work with License Coach, he told me, he said 78% of people pass on the first try if they get through the class in 7 days or less. And it drops down to the 30 percentile when they get to that 14-day mark. So I'm selling them on why they need to get through this class early or quickly. Here's the other thing. Depending on your state, you might not be able to do this, but I'm going to go ahead and set a date with them regardless. We need to set a date on that. So if I got a really sharp, ambitious person and we just had this conversation and they told me that they can finish it in 2 to 3 days, okay, perfect. So here's what we're going to do. Today's Friday. So we're going to set your test up on Tuesday, okay? So then we'll go ahead and set that up and then hold them accountable to that, all right? I kind of want to move on from that because, it's non-licensed and that doesn't really go along with my talk. All right, licensed recruits. This is where things get real. All right, so, and you'll see, kind of like some of these things can happen simultaneously. But contracting is the first thing that needs to happen. Okay, like when you've got somebody that's licensed, there's that urgency around getting them contracted with the carriers. Okay, because once they get contracted with the carriers, there's going to be a little slight delay for them getting. So I'm trying to get somebody to making money quickly. Does that make sense? Like if you have somebody, who doesn't hang out with us, like Marcus said, was just talking about this. Because basically what he was explaining was the Alliance is a voluntary army, right? And so if I'm in a voluntary army and I'm not making any money, I might leave that voluntary army, right? So what my goal is if you want people to stick around, you get them making money. You get people under them, get them making money. Now you build out stability in your business, in their business too. But I've got to get them contracted. That's the first thing. So urgency in that. I want them to get contracted. I get them contracted with like 9 or 10 companies right off the rip. I know some people start with like 2 or 3, but I just, this is important too because if somebody goes out into their first appointment and let's say they don't take paper apps with them, and they're trying to get into, they got to sell on the hook, and let's say it's with Royal Neighbors, right? And they don't have access into Royal Neighbors. That's the most deflating thing. Because the old sales slogan of time kills all deals, that happens in final expense too, just so you know. So like now, when you go back to that lady 3 days later, after you finally got logged into your portal and can get to the e-app, now she's like, talk to my daughter, talk to my son. I don't think that's a good idea anymore. I've lost that 3 days, all that emotion that I just built in the house, completely gone. So this is massive. Like you've got to get them contracted quickly. Like that's the next step, strategy call. Another thing I picked up from Garrett. So this is something I added in. So we do phases. So you'll see like this one says phase 1. So we do phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. Okay, and I'm going to break them down all here. But I had Mike Guerra on a team call of mine, I don't know, probably a month ago. And he just said something about this, and so I dug in a little bit more with him. And what he does with his people is he does a strategy call with them. And I started doing this right after we get somebody contracted. We get on a Zoom, we meet, right? We get friendly with each other. But this is where I build a lot of my relationship with them. And I'm also figuring out things about them through the business, right? So these strategy calls, what I'm doing is I'm trying to figure out what their goals are. Short term, long term. Is this a stepping stone for them? Or they want to build a big business? How much money do they need to make this week? What do they need? Do they want to replace their job? What kind of income do they need to do that? Right? That's what I'm trying to figure out. What's their long-term goals? Right? And this is where you're going to find out things about like their family, why that's important to them. Why do they need to make 4K a week? Why do they need to make 10K? You might find out that they have, like all the things that they shouldn't. They're trying to look rich and they've got a bunch of bills. Right? Like this is where you're going to find out things about them that you're not going to find out about them without doing a strategy call. So that's what we do here. I find out what their schedule is going to look like. I figure out, this is where we talk about activity too, right? So expectations from you and the new agent, okay? Let's go, hold on, let me slow down for a second. Schedule, that's a very important piece, and so is the activity to accomplish that. When I'm talking about activity, I'm showing them what activity it's going to take for them to get to those goals. Now, they've just told me what their goal is. I need to make X amount of money a week. Now I'm going to show them what they need to do. Okay? And then the expectations part. Expectations from you and the new recruit. So here's the deal. If I'm working with you, I'm going to tell you right off the rip, like, hey, here's what you can expect from me. And I'm going to tell them that they can expect that I'm going to give them the coaching, the training, and the resources to be successful here. I'm going to communicate with them. I'm going to pick up the phone when they call me. I'm not going to text them back. I'm going to pick up the phone. I'm going to call them. Here's what I expect from them. I expect communication. I expect them to do what they say they're going to do. And if they don't, I stop working with them. It's a fact. Like, Mark and Andy have been drilling this into us. Work where you're deserved. Right? Like, I take that to heart. Like, work where you're deserved. Here's the thing about recruiting. Anybody have agents call them that are frustrated with recruiting? Yeah? You ever see this trend? They're always talking about the same people. That's what causes frustration in recruiting. Is you're talking to the same people, and that can be tough. Can you scroll up just a hair? Back to the. Yep. Okay. Cool. All right. Thank you. And then I'm getting them into the boot camp. Okay, boot camp or training videos, whatever training videos you use. I have a boot camp that I created on Teachable, and we use that. So this is where you can't miss the mark. When you have training videos, like people do not, as Anthony Robbins says, people don't lack resources, they lack resourcefulness. You cannot come to the Alliance and say that you don't have the resources to be successful here. Gina Hawks has spent a lot of time, Andy spent a lot of money on this thing called the Alliance University. I told you, he's back. They spend a lot of money on this stuff. So you could get carried away with it. You could go watch every video on every single thing. Do I think you should do that? Absolutely not. It's a waste of time. But they're there. So what I do is I put them through this boot camp. But here's where I'm different than this is where I hope to God nobody in my organization ever says I'm not getting the help or support. Because here's what we do. When we get them through when they're going through the boot camp, this is just a precursor. We're not going to be like those other companies, at least within my organization. I do not tolerate sending just videos and expecting them to be successful. I got to do one-on-ones with them, and I'm going to get to that in a second here. But I'm trying to give them an idea like, hey, this is just a precursor to training. Because what I got sick of was starting from scratch every time. That's why I created the boot camp. Really, was buying back my time. I created this boot camp so they would go through it, and then when we got to talking about the phone script, they would know the phone script. When we got to talking about the in-home presentation, they were familiar with that. So things just were a lot easier. So now a phone script call takes me 30 minutes. In-home, that probably takes me about an hour to do. But I'm giving them that expectation. Hey, I want you to go through this, and I want you to remember as much as possible. But after this, we're going to do one-on-one coaching, right? And so then what I'm doing, I really want to get to this part. One-on-ones. So what do the one-on-ones look like? Okay, phone script. I'm not here to teach somebody how to read. I think a lot of people, when they're doing phone script training, they're like, all right, let's go over the phone script. That while I do like a brief minute of that, Like we might spend the first 5 minutes of that phone script. I want to hear what they sound like. And I'm also giving them those expectations after the boot camp. What do you do? All right, once they finish up the boot camp, what I make them do is well, it sounds weird. I don't make them do it. I ask them to do it. And most people do it when you ask it in a have-to way. So what I have them do is I have them record themselves doing it 10 times. Here's what I say to them. Hey, I want you to be able to get on the phone with me tomorrow, go over the phone script, and if I asked you to not have the phone script in front of you, you could recite most of it back to me. I want you to practice it with a family member. I want you to record yourself. Because when people record themselves, they hear what they sound like. You know what I mean? Like, here's your chance, uplines. Who's said to somebody, like, hey, say it like this, and then they say it, and it's not like that, and then they're like, I just said that. And you're like, no, you didn't. But when people listen to themselves, like, you sound like a telemarketer. No, I don't. I'm talking slow. Like, I feel kind of dumb how slow I'm talking. That's how I felt when I first started. I was like, this is weird, because y'all hear I talk fast. So, but like, they hear themselves, or let's say they're going up in the phone script, and I need them going down in the phone script. They think that they're doing that. But then they hear themselves on a recording, and then I have them send that recording to me. So I review that before I get on the phone with them. If they don't send me that stuff, I don't do phone script training with them. And you might be like, that's kind of brutal. I care about my time. I mean, what kind of expectation are you setting with somebody if you get on that phone and still do that training? Oh, you can get away without doing what I tell you to do, right? That does not set a good expectation right off the rip. So I'm very diligent about this. If I get on the phone with them, I'll just rebook it. Hey, and you can tell, you guys know it, when you get on the phone with somebody and they don't know the phone script, or you can tell it's their first couple times going through it and they're stumbling over every word, you're like, you didn't do any of the training. And then you get off that phone and you rebook with it. But you're setting that expectation with them. That if you, like, I'm holding up my end of the bargain, you're not holding up your end of the bargain. Going back to the expectations that you set on the front end. And that's important because people need that. People need expectations. They need structure. That's what, like, some people are just flying blind. And if you don't do this, like, all this stuff that I'm going to talk about, like, if you don't do it, I can only really come up with 2 reasons that you wouldn't do this with your new people. Is 1, you don't care. You just don't care about them. You don't care if they succeed. Or 2, you don't feel confident enough to do this with your new people, right? And then what I would tell you there is, if that's the case, what you need to do is you need to reach up. And you need to be on, like, I love it when I have somebody in my organization, they'll reach out to me, and they'll say, hey, you know, because what I've started to try to do is expand this to some of my team. When I'm doing a training, I'll get other people. I'll hit them up. I'll say, hey, I'm doing a training at 2 o'clock if y'all want to put some people on it. And then I know they're not doing it with their people, but they don't get on the call. I'm like, I need you to be on the call too so that you know how to do this. Because if I die, what's going to happen to my organization? Like, I need to have leadership, right? But on the phone script, what I'm really hitting on, like, I spend most of my time on objections. Most of the conversation, because the best people at phone script are the ones that know what objections they're going to face. And here's the cool thing, like, this is what I tell everybody, people aren't that creative. There's only really like 3 or 4 objections that you're going to get on the phone. That's it. Like, it's not, I mean, they might be worded differently. You're going to get, I'm not interested, I already took care of it, right? You're going to get that type of stuff. But there's only like 4. So what we got to do is we got to master the objection so that when they get on the phone, they don't even think about it, right? What do you do when you get hit with an objection? What do you finish off with? Question. That's what they need to know, right? How many times did you say that person's name on the phone? That's the type of stuff that I'm trying to get across. I'm not trying to teach them to read the phone script. They know how to do that. But I'm definitely hitting on objections. And then expectations. So, you know, when you got a new agent getting started, you got to kind of take yourself back on a lot of this stuff, because some of you guys have been here a while and you forget how important some things were when you were first getting started. Right? Like, Marty, how long you been with us? 14 years. So when you're getting a new person started, I'm not saying you, I'm just saying, as an example, when you're getting somebody started, you might have a tough time going back and remembering what it was like to be in their shoes. Correct? So you might have thought at first, like, hey, I'm going to book 20 appointments this week and I'm going to make 50 dials. You know, but that might be realistically what somebody thinks. But you have to set the expectations. Terry Edwards does a great job of breaking it down. You know, he uses that dial. What's that thing called, Mike, from the university that I'm thinking of? It's got like the 300 dials and it tells you how much you're going to make. Income planning sheet. Yeah, he does a great job breaking that down. So we started to go over that with our people. Give them realistic expectations of what they need to do, because it's always, a lot of times, it's a lot less. And it goes back to what we just talked about. Once I have that game plan call with them, I know their schedule. So I know where they need to fit these things in. All right, let's move on from phone script. In-home presentation. I love doing the in-home presentation. I feel like I'm good at it, and I wasn't that good at it when I was selling. Like, I feel like I'm better at it now. Anyway, so when I go over the in-home, like, I'm telling you, I'm so freaking specific with every little step of what they're doing, okay? I'm talking about where they park their car, where, like, having their stuff ready to go when they get there. Throwing up that, this is what Clay Murtis taught me when I first started. He was like, whenever you get out of that car, throw up a wave at the house. And I was like, well, I'm going to look like an idiot. But you know they're looking. You know they're looking. Like when you have somebody pull up your house, are you looking out the window? Like, who's that? And if you see them wave, wouldn't you think they saw you? That, for me, I was like, that makes sense. And then he goes, and it would be the stupidest thing you did if nobody's looking. It's like, perfect. That takes off the pressure. So I talk about that approach. When they're walking up to the house, what does that look like? What are you looking for? Everything's so intentional with sales. Everything's so intentional. When I'm walking up, what am I going to say? I'm giving them things to say on this. So if they have a shitty house, I'm not going to be like, wow, this is a beautiful home. I'm going to be like, I'm going to come up with something different. You know, like maybe they plant nice flowers, or maybe they take care of their lawn, whatever it is. Or if nothing else, wow, it's so peaceful out here. You know, like anything. All right. I'm real big on this. I learned this from Stephen Davies. I teach people this because I think more people, if they would understand that life insurance is an emotional sale, not a transactional sale, they would be better off. Right? Like, and understanding what that means. That person needs to feel like you care. All right? So I break down the story, the situation, the solution, the solidification. I break that down, and I'm not doing an in-home presentation, so I'm not going to break that down. But I explain to them why that's so important. And I explain to them the sale actually happens in the story and the situation, not in the solution. A lot of new agents, and this is what will happen. This is why you got to train them. They'll glaze over the story and the situation. They'll move straight to the solution. And even if they're successful, they'll be the king or queen of chargebacks. I promise you, right? Because that is where the sale happens. By the time you get to the solution, you should have the sale made. And then the solidification, that's pretty straightforward. You got to, yeah, we drill in on that, right? We put them on the do not call list, everything, you know, but sometimes. And I'm talking about rapport building, small talk. You got to understand, like, I don't want to talk about the younger generation, but they really struggle with this one. And it's not your fault, you know. Your parents just gave you a lot of iPad time. And you'd rather sit across from the client and text back and forth than communicate. I'm just kidding. I know I got my own problems with my generation. But this is where, like, I'm giving them things to talk about. And hear me out when I'm telling them. I'm not telling them to build rapport by asking stupid stuff. I'm explaining to them why the questions they're asking, and these questions appear genuine, right? But why are these questions important? I want to find out where they're from, right? What I tell agents, I'm trying to get a landscape of what their family dynamics are. You know it if you've been in homes. You'll find out very early on they don't talk to their kids. Their kids live in Maryland. They moved down here to get away from them, right? Like, you'll hear the craziest things. But I'm trying to get an understanding. To them, it appears like I'm coming off as just curiosity. But no, I'm intentional with the questions that I'm asking because I'm trying to figure that out. Objection handling, right? Like, we have an ATM. That ATM is for me, I think the ATM addresses a lot of objections before it comes over. So I need to know that. Let me slow down just 1 second. I want to go back to something. When we get to this in-home presentation part, I also set the expectation with them. You're good with the notes. I just thought of this. But I'm setting that expectation that they need to have their ATM set up. I'm setting that expectation that they need to send it to me before so I can review it, so I can give them feedback on it, right? So again, an expectation. And guess what? If that expectation's not met, same thing happens that happens with the phone script. We don't do that call then. Why would I spend an hour of my time with you if you won't spend any time doing what I ask you to do? It just makes no sense, okay? How to properly fill out a green sheet, ERS. When to call, how to call from the home. When to call, whenever shit's not going right, you know? No, but like, how to call is a big thing. Like, this is something that I figured out in the story part. What we do is we listen to them. We listen to different stories, different situations that they've had happen in their life. Right? And then at the end of that, so we get all that, we recap that with them again. Now, when Sean's like the master. You're a great person to call from the home. You do really well at this. So when Sean Boone calls me from the home, by the way, most of the time he knows what product to go with. He's not like he's been around, right? But he calls because when he's in the house with somebody and he's sitting there, he's like, hey, Brandon, I'm sitting here. He always says, my new good friend. That's what he always says. I'm sitting here with my new good friend. And look, Miss Jones was looking at getting some coverage on herself, and he recaps again why this is important to her. Because think about something here. I feel like I'm doing it in-home, and I don't need to be doing this. But think about this. Now you've had 3 points of where you've readdressed why it's important to them. So they know that you're listening. They know that you care. That builds trust, right? So building trust is a big part of getting a sale. Okay? So when he says it again to them, because think of, in the way I explained the presentation, this happens all in the front end where you're going over their story and their situation before I pull out that ATM. When I pull out that ATM and I start going through stuff, start to lose that emotional side, kind of starts taking a dip. Now, when Sean calls me from the house and reiterates why they're looking for coverage, it spikes back up the emotion right before we give them quotes. Game on, baby. All right. When to call, how to call, presenting quotes, solidifying the sell. Okay. I knew I'd run out of time. Okay. All right. This is going to be unpopular opinion. I get it. Ride-alongs are not necessary. I don't care what you say. Here's the thing about ride-alongs. If you're working with me, I want you to go out there and I want you to get punched in the face a couple times before you come on a ride-along. Here's the thing. Ride-alongs are a procrastination technique. That's it. They're delaying getting out there and getting punched in the face. That's the only thing they're doing. Now, here's the other thing. With ride-alongs, if you've never been out there and you've never presented to a client, what do you even know to look for that person's doing? You're like a deer in headlights. You're like, I don't even know what's going on. I don't know why he said that. But if I've done it a couple times, let's say I went on 5-10 appointments myself, now I go shadow Jeff Schultz, I'm going to be like, oh, that's what he says right there. And it makes a lot of more sense. And I know, again, if it's convenient and makes sense, do it. And if you're big on this, I'm not trying to change your opinion. I just think it's a waste of time, right? I think after I was out in the field for like 6 months, and then I got to ride along with Clay Murtis. And that was fun. That was interesting. But I learned so much from that. So don't let agents, don't give them a crutch to not fail. Let them go out there and get punched in the face, then take them on a ride along. They'll learn a lot more. Like, who does, just curiosity, how many people, before they get an agent to go into the field, they always get a ride-along set up? Nobody's doing that? Hell yeah, I guess it's not an unpopular opinion. Cool. Keep doing it. All right, leads, okay? These things are big. Leads, like uplines, you want to be on that call. I know it's easier just to have them schedule an appointment with the LPT, and I love LPT, but we need to figure out what's the best thing for them. And who knows better than the people out there actually doing it on what leads to get, right? So let's say if they've got an inventory, C leads, which are like probably 3-4 months old. If they've got those in inventory, I'm going to have my new person start on those. Right? Now I'm trying to get them. Now don't get me wrong. I need to figure out with them before we get on that call what kind of budget they got. All right? What kind of contract do I have them on? Am I going to do anything to match them? I'm not a big believer in buying people leads. And I'll talk to people about this all the time, and you hear the same old thing. Hey, this is what typically happens when I buy people leads. They work them like I bought them. And then they'll go, but that's not me. And that ends up being them if I fall for it. You know it. I mean, I remember that guy, Jeff, that you had, and he was like, well, can't you just give them to another agent? He never ran the leads that you bought from him. Remember that? What's that joker's name? We should call him back up. Anyway, so I'm trying to figure out things with them, like what leads do we start with? Consider their budget, surrounding counties, right? I got this new agent coming on, and her name's Regina. And Regina lives in Georgia, in West Georgia. Okay, don't be trying to steal them, Gary, because I think she's badass. I don't know yet. All right, so Regina lives in Georgia. So A leads in this county are like $80 a piece. But if you go one county over, she's in Alabama, and they're $40. Her pain point, she's at Senior Life paying $60 a lead. So now we're going to get her $40 leads. For the same ones that she's getting, she's just got to go to county over. So consider other counties. Like, people will travel. Debbie Woody, who's my assistant, she just went up to Maryland and closed 3 policies. Like, people will travel for it. I'm not saying it's always necessary. I'm just saying check surrounding counties, figure out the best thing for them. Like, you should be a part of your downline's lead purchase, at least to get started, right? Maybe it makes sense for them to get on Bang Bang, the internet leads. We've been killing on Integrity Lead Center too. I don't know if you guys ever play with those, but you can get like 75-cent, $1.50 leads. And I'm trying to get them on a subscription as quickly as possible. There's nothing that will kill their business more than not having leads to run. And I've never heard anybody complain about having too many leads, right? Like, who's going to complain about that? All right, another big things, and hopefully you guys can see some of these things are happening like simultaneously. Like, we're going to have to keep going back and checking their carrier profiles, their e-apps, making sure they know how to get into those, right? Transamerica, why? I don't know, but they have 2 different logins to get into their e-app. How many times, like, this will happen, and again, deflating. You get an agent, they think they got their portal all set up, you didn't spot check it, they get into the house, and they're like, hey, my password and login's not working. That's a different one. Have you registered for that one yet? No. Right? Like, and then now they're trying to get registered and get into the, it looks terrible on you. So make sure they can get into the apps for each carrier. Make sure they know how to get into their carrier profiles. Make sure they save these things. And then you got to print off paper apps just to be safe. All right. I'm definitely going to go. All right, guys, y'all bear with me. Booking appointments. Again, these, you guys know this. 3 no's, call upline, track numbers, group text. Here's what I do with everybody when I send them out in the field for the first time. I put them in a group chat with 5, 6 experienced agents. And I tell them what to do. I tell them to put in their times of each appointment. These 5 or 6 people are going to see that. They're going to give them some encouragement. Go get them, Tiger. Okay? And so what happens is, if I'm their main point of contact, and I'm doing a talk like I am right now, and they're trying to call me, well, I need them to have other people, because if I'm not available, they know. They go into the chat, they put 911, the most available person calls them up. That's what happens every time, and that helps out a lot. And again, revisit how, when to call, what to bring up. Oh yeah, I'm just always kind of reiterating stuff with them. The flow of the appointment. I'm just trying to constantly give them encouragement there. Let me go back for a second. Okay, yeah. I was just going to say, like, tracking numbers is obviously important. Because you can't coach somebody without their numbers. That's like their stats, right? If you told me that like, I had a guy the other day, and he told me he called for 3 hours. I want to say he had 110 calls. He had 15 contacts and no appointments. Okay, so remember when I told him 3 no's, call me? Why didn't that take place? Like, he called me after the first 3 and then proceeded to get 12 more without calling me. But you can also, you start to kind of feel things, and I'm not saying that this is what happened, but that's a little unbelievable too. Like, how you get 15 people on the phone and nobody felt bad enough to say, okay, come over. Right? But at least he did send me the numbers. He told me, okay? So, and again, you got to go back and you got to have this conversation with people. All right. Communication. You already saw it. This is phase 3, is communication. You've got to be constantly, like I already used my example with Jeff Schultz, but like Julius is right next to him. Julius did the same thing. Like he blew up our phones when he was first getting started until he figured things out. So I always see the most successful people, they're constantly communicating. Here's the thing is, if you have somebody that's not communicating with you, it's typically because they're not doing anything. They don't have anything to tell you. And they don't want to hear you tell them that they need to work because they know that they're just being lazy. Right? So, and this is a big thing too, is communication is not one-sided. Like I hear people talk, yeah, I haven't heard from my upline lately. When's the last time you called him or her? Like, wow, it's so easy just to kind of point the finger there. But I will tell you, like, communication has to, like, and it's not just mindless communication. Again, everything that you do has to be targeted. So I'm not going to ask them questions about, like, how's your day going? You know, I might do that. But, like, that's not my intention of the call. I'm trying to figure out where they're going wrong so I can narrow in on coaching. I'm intentional with the questions I'm asking them. Hey, what happened in that last appointment? Tell me where it started to go south. Okay, say this instead. Why are you saying that? That's not in the ATM, right? Like I'm trying to, yeah, this is keys to success. Yeah, That's what I just said. Conversations need to be inspecting business and continuous coaching. As the uplines, you need to ask pointed questions to identify where coaching is needed, not vague bullshit. That's what I had on my notes. All right. And then, again, here's where I'm trying to get them to events, meetings and events. What do you guys, y'all know the answer to this one, I hope. What's the best event for someone to attend? That's right. So I'm constantly trying to get them, because they're gonna learn things. Like I do this thing in the in-home called Set the Foundation, and I send it to all my agents. They go over it, and it works like a charm. But I didn't come up with it. I got it from James Coleman. I went to a meeting in Atlanta. I recorded him going over what I have now taken, Set the Foundation. But I don't know if he knows that, but it really did help me out, and it was a game changer. So I want them to get around people. I think when you get people to 3 or 4 events, they stick around, right? We've got a new agent in Atlanta under my brother-in-law, Michael. And she's gone to every event in Atlanta with James Coleman. And now, like, the things that I'm going over with her make more sense because she's around other people doing it. She's meeting other people in the Atlanta area, so that's really helping out. Depth, I'm continuing to push for depth. You know, who do you know? And I'm celebrating their wins. I don't want them, like, people, it's crazy. I think Mike said, you know, I see what you're talking about when you say this. People will fight harder for the trip than they will the money. You know, isn't that the craziest thing? Like, you know, you get to keep the money too, if like, just to make you aware. Like, you don't have to give back the money to go on the trips, but people will fight for recognition. Like, I think this is an area I can improve on. I think Mike Guerra, I think Jason and Olga Mathis, I think they do a phenomenal job celebrating their people. I mean, how many times do you go on Facebook and see Mike Guerra posting one of his people with their first deposit? Do you know what that does? That gets that person more bought in. Like, he knows what he's doing. I mean, he's celebrating them, but he knows what he's doing too, I think. You know you're doing that, right? Okay. So celebrate them. Get them in front of people. Have them talk, right? Like, they're going to act like they don't want to talk. Like, Julius acting like he don't want to talk at my night out. He does want to talk at my night out. He wants to be celebrated. He wants to be recognized. People will fight for recognition, especially salespeople. They love that. So, all right, last thing I'll finish with is this. So everything that I just talked about there, it would be great. There's like things you can't pass off, though. There's things you can't, what's the word I'm looking for? That's the word. It's sad. Maybe. Dang it. This is what happens when you don't create your own presentation. Yeah, well, y'all got most of that, right? Two-way communication, mindset, meetings, events, drive depth, celebrate wins, duplicate yourself. Duplicate yourself. All right. You've got to, but you can't, what was that word again? Delegate some things. All right, this is, so what I would encourage you to do is first you got to get good enough to where you can train this stuff, and then you got to teach other people how to train it. Like, back to what I was saying earlier, like, I've been talking with some of them about this. It's like, I need them to be training the same way I am. That's a system, right? That's duplication at its finest. I need them to be training. So what I need to do is I need to get with the people that are hiring, and I need to go through this with them like they're a brand new person. And I need them to start working on this with their people. Because I can't be, I mean, it's a very bad spot to be if you lack leadership within your organization, right? Like, if I could save you guys from getting to that point, I hope I can, but you've got to duplicate yourself. Like, first, when I first hired Mike didn't know any of this, right? He was new to the industry. But after going out on appointments and getting the hang of it, watching me do it with agents, he was able to at least take the phone script. Like, who enjoys walking somebody through contracting? No, stop it, Billy. Nobody enjoys that mess. So I am big on, like, anything. This is the way I say, this is what I think of an assistant. Not in a bad way. But if it doesn't make me money, I don't want to do it. So I have them do all the things that are necessary for me to make money, but don't need to be involving me, right? I would have Mike jump in and do phone script training. I still like to do the in-home, but sometimes, I mean, he got good enough. Obviously, what are you at, in 10K in the last 2 weeks? 13K in the last 2 weeks. So my point is, he got good enough, but you got to duplicate yourself. all these steps. And I can send you that sheet and you can look at it. But you've got to implement some of this into your business. And then you watch, like now I've recruited 10 people. I've gotten 8 of them to start selling policies. Are we supposed to be done? Okay. That was a little scrambled. I apologize about that. But I will get you the information if you want it. And hopefully this was helpful. But if you start implementing this, I promise you'll see your business start going like this. Not because here's what you're going to feel like if you do it the other way. You're going to feel like you're on a like a rat on a wheel, just spinning your wheels, and you're going to get frustrated. Bye. See y'all.